What's up, dude? Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm really hoping that my dog back there isn't chewing on his bone too loudly. Oh, I guess he didn't want to be on camera today. Anyways, so carrying on with our true crime stories from each of the 50 states, we have moved on to Pennsylvania. Now, it's very late when I'm doing this, so I know I'm going to mess up a lot. Unfortunately, I just was not on the ball enough, and I did not have a story for this morning ready, so I did it, I guess, last night, super late. So, yeah, it's midnight. Anyways, I don't know why I do this to myself. Anyways, let's just jump right into our story. Jean Wholaver, I know I'm going to say the last name wrong, 43 years old, along with her two daughters, Elizabeth, 15, also called Izzy, and for the story, I am going to refer to her as Izzy, and Victoria, 20 years old, and Victoria's 9-month-old daughter, Madison, were all going to a Christmas Eve dinner at Jean's parents' house in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, but they were going to be arriving late, and it sounds like they did let Jean's mother know about this. Johnstown is about a 2.5-hour drive from their home in Middletown. Normally, Jean's husband, Ernest, would make the trip with the girls, and then they would spend Christmas Eve night at the in-laws' house, at John's in-laws' house, and then Christmas Day, they would, do a big Christmas dinner and supper, and they would open presents, and they would celebrate it with Jean's family. So that was typically the plan. However, Jean and Ernest were separated. They had separated that summer after 20 years of marriage. So this year, it was just going to be the girls. Jean's mother had been calling Jean's home, but none of the calls were being answered or returned, which had really concerned her. So she contacted the police to see if there were any reports of wrecks on the highway that Jean and her daughters would be traveling along. She had even called the Middletown police to see if they would be willing to do a welfare check, but the dispatcher said that they wouldn't do it that day. If the girls were still missing, they would do it the next day. So when the car full of the girls didn't arrive on Christmas morning, Mary, who was Jean's mother, called to have a welfare check done because she had waited the day and they still were not there. Sergeant Robert Givler of the Middletown Police Department started duty at 7 a.m. and he was the one that conducted the welfare check at Jean's house. At first, he didn't see anything suspicious. He knocked and rang the doorbell, but, there was no answer. And then he made his way to the back of the house when he noticed a window to the garage had been busted open. And when he, opened the door, it was unlocked to the garage. And when he went inside, the car was still in the garage. So then he got really concerned. And he went to the back door, he knocked, he announced himself, and he walked right in. That door was unlocked as well. Upon entering the home, Sergeant Robert finds a dead body on the kitchen floor, and she was cold to the touch. So after that, he had called for more backup, and once they got there, the officers found a dead woman in the hallway with a baby in the crook of her arm. Baby Madison didn't have any injuries, thankfully, but she was dehydrated from being left alone in the house for almost a full 30 hours. Remember, she's 9 months old at this time. There was a third victim, also a woman, lying across a bed in a bedroom at the end of the hallway. All three women were shot by a small caliber weapon. Jean had been shot in the head, and she was found in the kitchen. Police suspected that she had been getting her morning coffee ready because there was a coffee filter by the garbage can. Victoria was shot in the top of her head, and she was lying outside in the hallway, right outside the bedroom where the other body was found lying across the bed. And that was Izzy. And she was shot in her left eye, with the shot taken so close that there were even burn marks around her eye. And she had burn marks on her hand as well. So police were suspecting that she had grabbed the barrel of the gun when it went off, and that's what caused her hands to be burnt along with her eye. A group of wires at the back of the house had been cut, and one of them was the phone line. So if the girls had called for help, it wouldn't go through. So obviously, someone that knew the house. Now, Ernest had been arrested for molesting his daughters when they were younger and still living at home. He first started sexually assaulting Victoria, who was hoping that if she stayed quiet about it, it wouldn't happen to Izzy. Unfortunately, she was wrong, and once she found this out, she confided in an aunt about it and said that it was now happening to both of them. The girls went to police to file formal charges, and after Jean found out about the situation, she filed a Protection from Abuse, PFA, against Ernest. He had to leave the house and wasn't allowed near the house or the girls, according to his bail release conditions. He was released in July 2002 on a $100,000 bail pending trial. He moved back to Cambria County to live with his parents. So, knowing what they know about Ernest, detectives went to speak to him about the murders. He claimed that he had heard that it had happened, but he had no knowledge of who could have possibly done it. Ernest said that he and his brother Scott had been spotting deer and coyotes in the mountains from about 2 a.m. to roughly 10 a.m. Ernest was exercising his right to remain silent during the investigation, and he had an attorney also. Now, when I say they, I mean the police, had also interviewed and suspected that maybe it was Madison's dad who had done it, but it didn't look like it was going to be him, and there was, a few other suspects that they looked into, but those just ultimately went nowhere. Scott stuck to their rehearsed alibi for a while, but after he was shown photos of his sister-in-law and nieces murdered, he started crying and ultimately confessed. He told police that he had driven Ernest to the house in Middletown in the morning of December 24th, 2002. The brothers had been drinking when Ernest said that he wanted to go to Middletown to get his dog. Scott drove him there despite knowing the bail conditions. They arrived around 4 a.m., and Ernest told Scott to park down the block and to stay in the car. And when he got out of the car, he went in the back seat and he grabbed a couple items from the back, but Scott said that he didn't know what they were exactly. 10 minutes later, he came back and they headed back to Cambria, but not to where they lived, but into a very wooded, foresty area. Scott said that Ernest was in an agitated state, and when Ernest came back to the car, he was like, "Drive, drive, drive!" So obviously, something was up. When they got deep enough into the woods, Ernest took off with a pistol and shotgun, and when he came back to the car, he didn't have either of the guns. State police set out to find the guns in the massive area of woods that the men drove to. They were just about to give up when an officer looked down between some rocks and saw the rusted barrel of a gun. When the serial number of the gun was ran, it came up as registered to Ernest's mother's brother, so his uncle. Ballistic testing showed that the gun was in fact the murder weapon. Ernest was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, and the state was seeking the death penalty. While in prison, Ernest tried hiring a hitman to kill Madison's dad and planting a confession letter confessing to all 3 of the murders, but a fellow prisoner had heard about the plan and told authorities about it, thankfully. The 3 charges of murder were topped with sexual assault offenses and criminal solicitation related to having Madison's dad killed. Now, this plan never went through, thankfully, but still. Ernest was convicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder, killing prosecution witnesses, conspiracy, reckless endangerment of Madison, burglary, and criminal solicitation. He was acquitted of the sexual offenses, and the jury gave him 3 death sentences. However, still to this day, he remains on death row. In 2014, the sexual assault charges against Ernest would stay on his criminal arrest records, and as of 2020, Ernest was 59 years old and still alive and on death row. So kind of a crazy story. I really didn't look that much into Madison after the fact, just kind of out of respect of privacy. I don't know if she necessarily wants her life now to be reported on, so I just kind of let that go. But I thought that this was a wild story, and it's nothing that happened like super recently, but I still thought that you guys would find it interesting, and it made for a longer video, which some people have been asking for. So I hope that you guys found this case super interesting. I'm curious to see what you guys think about this down in the comments below. You know, always keep it respectful. These are real people, and there is still a living victim, so we just want to be mindful of that, you know. But other than that, that is my story today for Pennsylvania. If you guys found it interesting, please be sure to give it a thumbs up down below. That really does help to get my videos out into the algorithm more, and it just helps my channel. If you'd like to, please subscribe. You don't have to if you don't want to. Thanks for just hanging out with me for this video, and for those of you that are going to be coming back for another True Crime Courier video, I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye, guys.